Today we're going to be in Matthew 5, 9 to 12. We're wrapping up the Beatitudes, Matthew 5, 9 to 12. And so Jesus is going to remember that as he's gathered all of this crowd, these are the first things that he's saying to them. And I want you to keep this on the forefront of your mind, especially as we go into verses 10, 11, and 12. So let's go ahead and start. Matthew 9 to 12. It says, Matthew 5, 9 to 12. It says, "Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called children of God. Blessed are those who are persecuted because of righteousness, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are you when people insult you, persecute you, and falsely say all kinds of evil against you because of me." Verse 12, "Rejoice and be glad, because great is your reward in heaven, for in the same way they persecuted the prophets who were before you." The other day we were coming back actually from moving, and let me pause. I did want to say, got ahead of myself today. I wanted to say thank you to the church just for all the blessings in helping Victoria and I move, all of the great food and the brownies and cookies, which you'll probably see me grow a little bit because of how much y'all brought, but we definitely appreciate it. It was a huge blessing, definitely a huge help. So thank you from the bottom of our hearts from everybody that helped us. So let's go back. Matthew 5. So we were moving some stuff this week, and Charlie was with me on the way back, and we were in my Jeep. I had the top down, and so when you're sitting down, you don't have a lot of dance moves as you're listening to music in the car, so you're very limited in what you're doing. And so I was going down the road, and I was jamming out and listening to music with Charlie and just kind of being silly and dancing. And so we're going down, and I'm doing that, and then out of the corner of my eye, I see him like moving his hands, and for a moment, because the top's down, I thought it was a bug on him. And he hates bugs. He freaks out, instant crying as soon as a bug is anywhere in his vicinity. And so I look back to make sure that I'm not going to have a meltdown. And Charlie's looking at his hands, and he's kind of like doing this. And then I figured it out after a new song came on that he was really trying to do this, which was the dance move that I was doing. So again, don't judge me for the dance move that I was doing, but Charlie was sitting there and trying to copy me and just join in on this moment where we were having fun and just being silly. And the reason why I bring that up is for kids, you don't have to ever sit there and tell them, hey, watch what I'm doing and copy what I am saying or doing. They are constantly watching, constantly ready to join in and copy either mom or dad or any of the adults because they're learning about the world around them. They're watching the people around them so that they know how to operate and be a normal child in the world and learn about the world around them. And so for children, you never have to sit there and tell them, watch me and do what I do. They just naturally do it. And as we get into the finishing up the Beatitudes, but especially as we get into verse 9 where it talks about Jesus calling us to be a peacemaker, we are called to do the same thing, to be God's children, and we are watching Jesus as he does and lives out in the world. It means that we're looking through the Gospels and we are holding our life. He is setting the example. And so as he calls you to be a peacemaker, you're not setting your own example of peace or what you think it is. You are looking to Jesus' example. So let's go back and read verse 9 before we go any further. Matthew 5, 9, it says, "Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called children of God." Now, as Jesus is calling you to be a peacemaker, he's not calling you to have peace. It's not his interest at all. To be a peacemaker means that you are creating harmony in the relationships that you're directly involved with and in helping those relationships between people create that harmony. And so we have a choice in life. We are either going to sow seeds of chaos to the relationships around us, or we're going to sow seeds of peace. And so as Jesus is tracking with us, he's going to walk us through the Beatitudes. He's talking about this crowd that he's drawn in. That's the very first week that we looked at this. Last week we looked at the people that he's creating us to be. And as you do these things, you should naturally start to create and ooze peace in all that you do. You should start to create peace because you are hungering and thirsting for righteousness. You should start to create peace in the relationships around you because you are showing mercy or because you are being pure of heart. And so as Jesus is calling you to be a peacemaker, it is implementing these things. But a lot of times we have our own vision, our own thoughts for what peacemaking actually is. As Jesus is turning and he's addressing his crowds, he's going to have 4 different groups that he's actually talking with. The very first group that he's addressing is going to be the Sadducees. Now, the Sadducees are these religious leaders. You can think of them kind of like your professors And the big thing that the Sadducees have done to try to broker peace in Israel is that they've cozied up with the Roman government beside them. And so they're creating peace because if they can be friendly to them, then the Romans will be nice to them. The nice thing for the Sadducees is that it's also made them rich. And so it's kind of created this disconnect between them and the rest of the Israelites. The next group that Jesus is going to be addressing, and these are all people that are following Jesus and that he's turning around to talk to, is going to be the Pharisees. Now, the Pharisees are going to be, again, another group of religious leaders, but you can kind of think of them as pastors. They're much more boots-on-the-ground type of people. They are sitting there and actually directly ministering to different groups of Israelites. Now, what they're going to do is they emphasize the history of just interpreting the word and everything like that, but their big problem is that they have good teaching, but they don't do what they tell others to do. So they have really good teaching, but they don't follow it themselves. The next group that Jesus is going to have in his crowd are going to be those of the, let me make sure I've got this right, the Qumran community. So the Qumran community is seeing all this stuff that's happening. They see that Israel has been conquered by the Roman government and that it's caused all these disconnects. And so their response is, I'm going to create peace by just removing myself. They're going to separate and form their own communities. So the best way that they know how to do that is they're just going to remove themselves from everybody else. The last group that's trying to create peace in Israel are going to be called your zealots. Now, your zealots are going to lead in about 20 to 30 years after Jesus, the rebellion of the nation of Israel, and that's going to lead to the Roman government coming in and just wiping them off of the face of the planet. But before this is either a religious idea or that they're starting up these little minor rebellions all in these little pockets throughout Israel. And so their thought is that the way that they create peace is they remove the oppressor, they remove the Roman government and get them out of here. And so as Jesus is turning and he's saying, hey, I want you to be peacemakers. Blessed are the peacemakers. There's 4 groups in Jesus' crowd that are all going to interpret that very differently. For the Sadducees, they're going to say, well, I'm going to create peace because I'm going to get really cozy and really good with the Roman government. But then on the opposite end, you have like the zealots who are like, no, we need to remove them. That's how you create peace. And even as we read this today, hundreds and hundreds of years removed from Jesus, if you're called to be a peacemaker, each of us are going to interpret that differently. We're all going to be looking at that and saying, I'm going to create peace my own way. And there's usually 2 extremes that happen with this. The first one is you're going to be kind of like the Qumran community, and you're going to remove yourself from everybody, right? So the easiest way for you to have peace is you just don't have any relationships at all. You don't have any friends at all. You don't get involved with people at all. So you have peace. The other end is that you kick down the door anytime there's any kind of disruption and you stick your nose into any small situation and you insert yourself to try to force peace anywhere that you can. And so as Jesus is coming to you and he's saying, I want you to be a peacemaker, the example that we look to is him. And so as you look through the Gospels, Jesus is going to be found kind of in the middle. There's moments where he will interject himself into a moment where he's sitting there and he's talking to 2 groups of people. There's other times where he necessarily won't step into that circumstance and situation. So he's calling you to use wisdom, but he is your example in anything, not just peacemaking, but if God is calling you to love, to show mercy, to be kind, Jesus is the ultimate example of doing that. And so what can happen for us is that we have to be reminded that you are not just here for yourself, and your relationship with God is not just for you. The idea of peacemaking is that your relationship with God is impacting you to such a degree, to such an impact that it's oozing and flowing over into all areas of your life, into other relationships. When I was working a few months ago, when I had my full-time job and working in a couple different places, for some reason, I don't ask for this, but people will just come and talk to me about the things that are going on in their life. And somehow I get like sucked into not being a part of the drama, but people will just come and talk to me and unload on me on work, on like all these issues that they're having with other people. I don't ask for it, don't want to be a part of it, I don't like drama, just need to insert myself there. I don't want to be a part of that. And so this one time at work, we were sitting there and somehow I had one group of people come to talk to me about this other group of people. And then like a day later, this group of people came to talk to me about this group of people. And so I had a choice to make. I was reminded that if God's calling me to be a peacemaker, I can either stick myself out of this situation or I can try to jump in and help, which is going to be messy and probably not that pretty. And so as I sat there and I prayed about it and I thought about what to do next, I decided to try to do the hard thing, which was to call out both groups. As those people were coming to talk to me, a lot of times they were kind of blinded to their own stuff that they were doing. And I tried to broker peace. And so the reason I share that is because if you live your life in such a way where you're upholding the Beatitudes, you're upholding what it means to follow Jesus, where you're showing mercy, where you're being pure of heart, where people can come and talk to you and they don't have to worry about if you're going to judge them or if you're going to think badly about them, then you'll naturally start building relationships and bridges. And Melanie shared this earlier today, where Jesus can walk across. And I thought that was such a beautiful image. Where if we live our lives in such a way, we don't have to stick our nose into every circumstance and every situation and say, I've got to create peace, I've got to do this. But if you live your life in such a way where people say, hey, there's something different about you and I want to come talk to you because you seem like you genuinely care about me, then you get to naturally create peace as you're engaging with them. That's the call that Jesus has on each of us. But it's going to lead us into a tricky situation. Because with Jesus, Jesus is there to create peace, but at the end, he gets crucified. Which means that if we're going to be followers of Jesus, he's going to be quick to connect two things. Look at verses 10 to 12. If we go and create peace, if we live out the Beatitudes, there's a natural consequence to that. And it says, blessed are those who are persecuted because of righteousness, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are you when people insult you, persecute you, and falsely say all kinds of evil against you because of me. Rejoice and be glad, because great is your reward in heaven, for in the same way they persecuted the prophets who were before you. So Jesus is going to be upfront in the first couple of sentences as he's talking with people and telling them and letting them know that, hey, you're going to experience persecution. And if you follow me like you're supposed to, you're going to ruffle feathers and people are not going to like you. Which is the opposite of many times when we follow Jesus, we expect the opposite of that to happen, right? If I'm perfect in loving, if I'm perfect in showing grace, if I'm perfect in showing mercy, then people should naturally respond to that and like me. And Jesus is saying that's not the case. And if you want a perfect example of that, look to Jesus. Jesus is perfect in all he did, never sinned once, never messed up, and yet Jesus is killed because of it. And so if you're going to follow him in his first couple of sentences to you, he's already letting you know that this road is difficult and that more than likely you're going to experience persecution, which means people are going to come after you. As you stand and you decide not to cheat on taxes, or you decide that I'm going to be honest at work and not steal from my company, or I'm going to tell the truth, any number of things, it will start to ruffle feathers. And so we as followers of Christ, at some point along the way, especially living in the United States, we think that if we follow Jesus, that somehow, some way, he's going to owe us something in return. That if I show up on Sundays and I have to listen to Bruce's boring sermons and I have to muster through that, and if I show up on Wednesday nights and I'm sitting there and I've got all of this and I'm reading my Bible and I'm praying, that it's some way along the path that God's going to give me an easy life. And I don't think we consciously say that. I don't think we say that out loud, but I do think that there's a belief I know that I have held on to where it's, God, if I do all these things for you, then you owe me something nice. You owe me an easy life. You owe me where people will like me. And Jesus is coming out at the very beginning and saying that's not the case. Matter of fact, if you live for me like you should and you are perfect in all that you do, people will actually respond negatively to you. And the reason why this is so important for us to hold on to is because we will treat God differently if we buy into that. We will come back and say, God, I'm angry at you because I did what you said, and because I did it, my life is now much more difficult. And Jesus never promises you an easy life. What he does promise you actually right here is that life is going to be difficult if you follow me. He's being upfront and honest with you. He's being pure of heart, which he called us to last week. And we have to remind ourselves, I would say almost daily, that following Jesus is an uphill battle. It is not something for the faint of heart. It is not something for the easy path. You each have a choice. I think back to my life, and in school, it was easier to not tell the truth. It was easier to try to fit in and be a part of the crowd. It's easier now to try to either hedge the corners a little bit or do something slightly a little off. Jesus doesn't call us to that. The reason why this is so important is I was listening to a video this week where a pastor was sitting there and he was talking about how he had walked away from the faith. No longer a pastor, no longer a believer in Christ. And he said the thing that absolutely struck him, the catalyst that got him to the point where he walked away from his church and he walked away from Jesus completely, was that he had bought in at some point that if he was going to be a pastor and he sacrificed all these things, then Jesus would give him an easy life, especially with his marriage. But his wife had an affair on. And it was that affair that brought all of that up to the top. It was the affair that got him to start questioning his faith. Because at some point along the way, he had bought in that if I follow Jesus and if I'm at church every time the doors are open and if I do all of these things, then God's going to give me an easy life. He's going to reward me. And many times our rewards are not in this life. And we have to be reminded that your call to follow him is not an easy one. And Jesus is upfront and honest about this, even at the very beginning. Which, as you go through seminary and they go through preaching classes and everything, they usually tell you don't say the hard things at the very beginning. And yet Jesus, at the very beginning of his sermon, is saying, hey, if you're going to follow me, expect life to be difficult. In other places, he's going to say, count the cost before you follow me. He wants you to be open as you come in and know that things are going to be difficult for you. That if you actually are a peacemaker, if you actually are a person that shows mercy or kindness, if you're pure of heart, the world doesn't always respond kindly to those things. And he's being upfront and honest with you about it now. Now I want to draw one last attention to you in verse 12. It says, rejoice and be glad, because great is your reward in heaven, for in the same way they persecuted the prophets who were before you. So Jesus is going to say, called to be a peacemaker. Usually when you're trying to be a peacemaker, it's going to lead to persecution, or when you're following me, it's going to lead to persecution. And then he doesn't end it there. He goes one more step and he says, actually, when you experience persecution, when people come after you for your faith, you're to rejoice and to be glad. Now, I don't know if you've ever gone through like a season of difficulty or persecution where people have made fun of you, but, being glad is not my natural response. Usually I get frustrated, I get angry. Sometimes I get sad because I'm like, God, I did what you wanted me to do, and yet here I am and people are coming after me. And yet, in Matthew 5:12, Jesus says to rejoice and be glad. What Jesus is doing is he's not telling you to ignore your emotions. He's not saying it's bad for you to be sad or bad for you to be mad. What he's telling you is that you have a choice. You can either choose by faith to look at the long road and see where life is going and saying, in faith, I'm going to rejoice in this moment of difficulty because this is not all there is. This life is not all there is. This is not all that we live for. We live for a new heavens and a new earth, and our allegiance is to a new kingdom. And so you can rejoice and be glad because I'm choosing to be glad in this moment because I'm living for God. It is an act of faith for you to trust God in a moment of difficulty and to rejoice and be glad because of it. Or you can just do what naturally comes to us, which is to be mad and upset and frustrated and shake our hands at God and say, how dare you make me go through this? And yet Jesus is calling you to something bigger and better. He's painting a better picture for you. To rejoice and be glad, to choose in faith that even though I do not see the outcome of what I'm doing here, even though I'm actually going through something negative, I am playing the long game. I see and I'm following the Lord with all my heart. I'm investing in something bigger and better than me. In Acts 16, Paul and Silas are in a city, and things are going really well for them. And at a certain point, they've had this demon-possessed girl following them for a couple of days. And at a certain point, Paul just gets sick of it, and he turns around and he casts the demon out of her. And you would think that the people would respond and be really excited about that they just saw this crazy, awesome thing. And yet, they respond by getting really upset, and the city gets together, they beat Paul and Silas, and they get arrested. This is an example of what Jesus is getting at here. And so as they've been thrown into jail and they're sitting there, they decide to choose to be glad and to rejoice, and they're singing songs of worship and they're praying. In the middle of the night, as they're doing these things, the jail has a massive earthquake, and there's an opening for them to run out. You're expecting them to run out. And as they are probably looking at that and considering it, you see the Roman guard on the other side, and they kind of take you in Acts 16, and you see, and he's getting ready to fall on a sword and take his life. And the reason that he's going to do that is that the Romans, during that time, if you were a guard and a prisoner escaped on your watch, it would be a life for a life. Your life would be taken for the prisoner that's escaped. And so there was nothing good for him if he stayed alive. And Paul and Silas call out, and they tell the guard that, hey, we're still here, we didn't escape. And because they did not escape, and because they did not use that opportunity, that guard comes to know Christ. The reason I share this is because that's an outflow of what Jesus just shared with us. That Paul and Silas do something amazing in casting a demon out of this girl. You would think that the people would rejoice and be glad, and they do not. They experience persecution, and as they are in jail, I'm sure bruised and beaten, they are choosing to sing songs of worship and to pray and to seek Jesus. Then there's this crazy moment where there's an earthquake, and you would think that they would say, oh, there's my opening. God must have opened this door for me. It's time for me to walk through. And yet, they don't. They stay there, and because they stay there and do the right thing and are honest, they save the Roman guard. So each of us have a calling and a responsibility. And as we start to look next week, Jesus is going to call you to be a people of salt and light. That what we do on Sundays and Wednesdays do not matter unless we're living it out throughout the rest of the week. And Jesus wants something better for you, and he believes in you. It's the reason why he's got you where you are. He's got you surrounded by people and friends and people that you may not like, maybe to be able to reach them, to impact them, and to shape them. That might lead to good things, and it may not lead to so great things. But if we keep our minds set on him, and we're called to be peacemakers and to love those around us, and we're called to rejoice and know that life may not be easy following him, that is a beautiful place to be. And it's a place that we need to remind ourselves to be often. Because I know that a lot of times I want the easy life. I don't want to go through difficulty. I don't want to have to stand up and be by myself as I try to stand on my faith and what God calls us to. And yet Jesus says there's blessing to be had there. That God can do awesome and amazing things when we say yes and remain faithful. And so I want to give you a moment here as we have our time of reflection. And this moment, again, is for you. The benefit is for you. It is for you to take some time and to think about what was just shared. Is there anything in your life where God is calling you to be a peacemaker in relationships around you? Is there anywhere in your life where maybe you're expecting God to give you an easy life and you've been mad and upset at him? Maybe this is a time for you to talk to God. But I give you this time for you to be able to talk to him, because usually that's the best thing we can do. It's not through hearing Bruce's 3 points on how to better your life. It is through you communing with Jesus. And so I'm going to give us that time now. And then if you would like to know what it means to follow the Lord, or to possibly join the church or baptism or anything like that, this is also a time where you can come down and be a part of that as well. With that, let me pray for us, and then we'll head into that time of reflection. Jesus, God, we just come to you now. And Lord, thank you for the calling that you have on each of us. God, that you do not save us and redeem us to set us back up on the wall and for us to not do anything. God, you have called each of us to make an impact where we are, to go out and change and shape the world around us. And God, we can either sow seeds of harmony and life or chaos. God, give us the strength and the courage to do the hard thing and the difficult thing, to follow you in all of our actions and all of what we say and all of what we do, because you are our number one priority and we love and care for you. God, I pray for everyone in this room that you would help them lean into you and that they would pursue you with all that they have. And I ask these things in your name.